Biden said a Palestinian state must come after the war. A real Palestinian state. Oh. Biden emphasized the Israeli-Palestinian conflict will not end without a two-state solution. Dude, Biden is so fucking cooked, dude. Holy shit. You think his tongue hurts from all the bootlicking from Netanyahu? Oh my God. His messaging is all over the place. He will not say anything that implies a restriction on Israel's behavior. And he was like confidently proclaiming that the Al-Shifa hospital was a Hamas HQ, which it wasn't. He was just wrong. America has access to the best intelligence networks of any country in the history of the world, and he's just like casually repeating the stupidest shit the IDF says. But now he's like, actually, I think a Palestinian state needs to exist. Where, dog? Where? What do you really think Israel is going to give back northern Gaza? Follow-up question: do you think that that's going to be the state, like an actual state and not just a concentration camp? Netanyahu already responded and tossed that suggestion out. It's so fucking pathetic, dude. It's so fucking pathetic. You don't get to toss our suggestions out, all right? I am going to be a full-on fucking Western chauvinist, specifically with Israel, okay? If you're like a tiny Central American country and you ignore us, that's based, okay? If you're Israel, you walk the fucking line. You exist because of us. What the are you talking about? You exist under a political and military blanket that we graciously provide you because you're our wedge against Iran. What you don't? Oh my fuck, dude! You have to know that Biden is seething too. He's just being a pussy about it. You know, he's being a bitch. It's so stupid, man. Let me see if I can break this thingy. Hold on. Netanyahu says Gaza needs a new civilian government, but won't say who. He means Israel. They want to conquer Gaza. They want to take all of it. Seriously, look at... Hold on. Like, does anyone seriously believe, now that 1.5 million Palestinians have been displaced, does anyone genuinely believe that Israel's going to be like, all right, there you go? Like, the construction costs of rebuilding Gaza City alone are, like, not possible. It would take years and years and years for Palestinian people, with the money they're provided, the resources they're provided, the equipment they're provided, to rebuild this shit. And in the meantime, they just, what, like 1 million homeless people in the streets? Like, is that what Netanyahu wants? I mean, probably, but, well, he wants something worse, but he would be morally okay with that, I assume. Like, you can't just return here. Scroll down that NPR article, Netanyahu, he directly says Israel government only. Well, nice of him to be honest. I think I know who it can't be. It can't be people committed to funding terrorism and inculcating terrorism. Dude, oh my God, he's such a fucking Nazi. He didn't just say it can't be Hamas or it can't be terrorists, which would be one thing. He says it can't be people committed to funding terrorism, implicating the Palestinian people broadly. Yeah. Here's Biden saying he can't and he won't show us evidence the hospital is Hamas in an interview.
Can you detail for us what kind of evidence that you have seen that Hamas has a command center under Al-Shifa hospital?
No, I can't tell you. I won't tell you.
Do you feel absolutely confident based on what you know that
Yes.
that is the truth?
Yes.
And Mr. President, after today, would you still refer to President Xi as a dictator, the term that you used earlier this year?
Well, look, he is. I mean, he's a dictator in the sense that he is a guy who runs the country.
And now he's referring to President Xi. Biden also accidentally basically called Xi a dictator. Yeah. And he f***ed his wife. He looks so scary here. It's just, I don't know, man. What's the point of being the most powerful country on earth if this is how we're going to act just because we're worried about Iran? Like, I would rather like open imperialism than this. I would rather America go, nope, we're done. Israel, bye-bye. Hey, Iran, if you build a nuclear program, we're glassing you. I would genuinely prefer that to this, like, pussy half-handing where the implication is that Israel will glass Iran on our behalf if they build a nuclear weapons program. Like that, like, because that's why again, the only reason we give a shit about Israel right now, the only reason, okay, is because they're our wedge in the Middle East. And the reason we want that wedge is predominantly preventing Iran from developing a nuclear weapons program, which is why for the past, like, 15 years, Israel has been constantly sabotaging Iran's nuclear programs, killing their scientists, blah, 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 blah. It's not like they're helping with, like, Syria. It's not like Israel is doing anything meaningfully good with our, like, continued alliance with Iraq. They failed there. Like, you know, what are they doing there? You know, it's Iran. Have you seen how hyped this Chinese space program's been? I haven't been following it, but yeah, I'm not surprised they're doing well. Or they get the idea Hamas HQ is built under a hospital. What was their evidence? Well, I mean, they just like lie. I apparently, like, some people have said that it's because Israel knows for a fact that there are tunnels under the hospital because Israel built them when they controlled the Gaza Strip. So they knew they'd be able to take videos of tunnels and be like, here's the secret Hamas tunnels. They fled just before we got here. My Hamas goes to a different school. You wouldn't know them. That kind of shit. But, like, I don't know. They lie all the time. They lie transparently about so many things all the time. It was an Israeli bunker they built in 1983. Newsweek did a fact check on it. Yeah, then if that's the case, it almost certainly is because they, first of all, it's a terror factor. They want to be able to intimidate and kill people in a hospital because they're genocidal. Like, well, a big part of the math equation has to be that they're evil. That is a big part of it. That factors in. A second, like, the other part is that they knew they'd have tunnels to take videos of. And then they got in there and they got videos of like 6 guns. 1/2 the guns I own in the entirety of the Hamas HQ. Fantastic. How is Israeli propaganda so bad? Fascists are very bad at critically evaluating their messaging to other groups. They're very, very, very bad at understanding like how to engage in that way.
Welcome
Here we go.
to the News Hour. Communications with Gaza are mostly cut off tonight because of a lack of fuel to power the system there. Israel is pressing its invasion in the north, and today the Israel Defense Forces discovered the body of one of the 240 hostages held by Hamas. Her remains were found near Al-Shifa Hospital, the main medical center in northern Gaza. Parts of it are now controlled by the IDF.
Is Israeli support growing or shrinking? Shrinking. The Western world has never seen this much pro-Palestinian support. Whether it'll be enough, I mean, no one knows whether it'll be enough to do anything, but it is true that, like, Israel's reputation is far worse now than it was in previous years.
Alana Allen reports.
In southern Gaza, thousands of Palestinians crowd tent cities after fleeing their homes in the north.
Remember, 1.5 million homeless people in what is now like 2/3 of an area the size of a part of Chicago. Like, we're talking about an area that began as about the size of a medium city, and now they only have like half of that, and a lot of homes have been destroyed.
Now, they fear they'll have to leave again.
Today in their leaflets, they're telling us to evacuate the south.
Early today,
Look at these little, I believe the technical IDF term for them is Hamaslings. Look at these. 4 of them. Insane.
Today in their leaflets, they're telling
5
us
of
to
them. You can't even
evacuate
see
the
past
south.
my camera.
Early today, the IDF dropped leaflets over the southern city of Khan Yunis, warning residents.
Curiously, these leaflets, unlike every other piece of messaging Israel puts out, are not written in English.
To get out. But many, like the Abu Jabal family, don't know where to go.
They asked us, the citizens of Gaza, to go to the south. We went to the south. Now they're asking us to leave. Where do we go? We want to understand where exactly we should go.
In northern Gaza, IDF forces
Go south where Egypt? Egypt isn't taking them. The reason Israel is saying this is so when they gun down these innocent people, they'll be like, oh, dude, we told them to leave. Yeah, remember, okay? Gaza Strip is so densely packed that even from maps that show its entirety, you can see individual streets, okay? Like, you could be on one side of the Gaza Strip and you could hit, like, a home run a decent portion of the way across. Like, it's not that big, you know? So anyway, northern Gaza, Gaza technically is this city, this area right here. I say sometimes Gaza when I mean the Gaza Strip. The northern part of the Gaza Strip has already been, the evacuation order went out weeks ago. It was an unfair, unlawful evacuation order, and as a consequence, there are still many, 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 many people here, like people in the Al-Shifa hospital. The IDF is closing in from both the north and the south. Now people down here are being told to flee. To where? Where? What? Where? Where? Are there even any Hamas left? The Hamas are terrorists. There's always terrorists. We learned this from the war on terror. You can't get rid of terrorism. You can only change the conditions that allow terrorists to exist. Like I said, there is a reason why Israel is not bragging about any big victories over Hamas, and that's because they're not really encountering them. The IDF is basically just strolling from block to block using like bulldozers to clear landmines and IEDs or whatever else. And just encountering civilians. Occasionally there might be a firefight, but like the Hamas isn't an army. There isn't like a stronghold somewhere with like 20,000 guys with weapons. That's not a thing. It doesn't exist. It's not real. The Hamas basically threw everything they had at Israel back on October 7th. And a lot of Hamas guys died. And you know what? Israel has every right to kill those guys specifically who are killing innocents in their territory. That's fine. I'd say I don't think that's morally wrong, you know? But then like they storm in through here. People are acting like this is some kind of like ground battle, siege of Leningrad or whatever. Like Hamas are fighting with the IDF on the streets. Here's a question. Considering the fact that the IDF has access to so much propaganda manufacturing tools, you know, like even basic stuff like video cams or whatever, why are there not more videos of IDF soldiers heroically fighting and defeating Hamas soldiers? Like, why are there not more like brave gunfights where the IDF guys go and like go through a room and like shoot some dudes and they're all Hamas, they have guns and there's like crossfire? Why is that not happening? Like have we not seen that in Ukraine? Have we not seen literally thousands and thousands of videos of Ukrainian soldiers fighting Russian soldiers because they're both soldiers? So what's happening here? Why? Again, it is genuinely astonishing that we are reaching a point where even mainstream media is starting to go like, wait, hold on. Like, I think we saw this with Wolf Blitzer really clearly, where Wolf Blitzer is not like some radical lefty or whatever, but while talking with that IDF spokesperson, was it the IDF spokesperson? I forget who he was talking to. It was an Israeli official of some kind, where basically the guy was like, yeah, we killed people, haha, like whatever, Hamas. And Wolf Blitzer is realizing, like you can see it dawning on his face, that he's talking to a monster. And it's been happening all over, like all across mainstream media, even like, yeah, the BBC, here PBS, you know, I've even seen this on CNN, not just with Wolf. There's been a shift in how this stuff is getting reported on. It was a former APAC editor. Okay, gotcha. Is the media coverage approaching fair? No. It's still, by not just calling Israel genocidal monsters, they are still biased in favor of Israel. But it's a hell of a lot better than it was before.
The south, they've been faced with drones firing outside the door, crossfire and
This Jake Tapper interview was absolutely devastating for the IDF. I didn't see this one.
Biden broad powers.
Extreme speech from Israeli cabinet members inflames tension. Which speech?
Of the
do is lay down very, very firmly what Israel cannot do in the West Bank, because that is the thing that's going to blow up in our faces, and that makes
thought of Israel. Now, Bisharat writes in Haaretz on Monday of this week that Smotrich, quote, sees the disaster that has befallen the country as an opportunity to plunder the West Bank. The settlers, who share his messianic ideology, have begun to carry out their plans to purge the area of its Palestinian population.
Yeah, literally, like Netanyahu's cabinet member was like, yeah, while we're killing people in the Gaza Strip, we have an excellent opportunity to also kill people in the West Bank. Like, openly. They're just, like, openly.
Unquote. Subordinate to Ben-Gvir, wandering the streets of Tel Aviv. And, quote, the thought police, hard at work, arresting civics teacher Dr. Meir Baruchin for posts on Facebook opposing the Israeli army's operations in Gaza, is now in the hands.
God damn, yeah. I didn't even see this. This is pretty direct. Like, keep in mind, all you need to make the IDF and Israel look monstrous is just to show what they've said. That's it. You don't even have to spin it, really. Just showing what has happened, what the Gaza Strip looks like. Talk to people. Don't talk to both people. Talk to Palestinians and talk to Israeli officials. No group on earth makes Israel look worse than their own cabinet members. Yeah, have them on. Please ask them basic questions and watch them dance and lie. Watch them just blatantly deny the humanity of Palestinian people. Yeah, fantastic.
Ongoing, so they haven't been able to move.
There's no end in sight to Israel's invasion, which it says will eventually expand south. With no fuel, Gaza's phone and internet lines are dark again today. Voiceless, Gazans bury their endless stream of dead and pray, with little hope left, for those still living. For the PBS NewsHour, I'm Layla Milana Allen.
And Layla joins me now here in studio. Layla, it's so good to see you in person.
Good to see you, Amna.
So you have been covering this war every day since it began, nearly 6 weeks in now. Just pull back the curtain a little bit. Tell us about what
they're in such a bubble. They have no idea how their inhumanity looks. Yeah, that's what I say about fascists being unable to critically evaluate their messaging and optics to the rest of the world. They can't do it. They have no idea, you know?
It's been like the experience of reporting on this as a journalist.
I mean, the first thing to say is war is horrific anywhere, and I've covered many conflicts over the last 15 years, but this one is in such a small space. So to begin with, the number of people killed on October the 7th in the Hamas attacks, everybody in this country of just 10 million people knows someone. And then, of course, such an incredibly small landmass inside Gaza as well. In a place the size of Rhode Island, you've got nearly 2.5 million civilians living there. Now, there's also the incredibly particular difficulty of access with this war. So we were based in Israel, we were going across Israel, across the Palestinian territories, but not inside Gaza. Normally, it is closed whenever there's a war every couple of years, as there always is in Gaza, and then journalists can go in. But it's now been 6 weeks, and there's no sign we'll be able to properly go in anytime soon.
Man, I wonder why Israel doesn't want journalists inside the Gaza. It really makes you wonder. Oh, it really makes you wonder why they don't want any cameras in there, why they cut the internet, why they got mad at Elon Musk for proposing that Starlink could be used to connect Palestinians to the internet. It really makes you wonder. How many journalists have they killed so far? Fuck, I don't know. It's like over 100 now. By the way, journalists being killed, a lot of people think when I say like journalists being killed, what I mean is like they just kind of get indiscriminately shelled. Israel knows where Palestinian journalists live. They're registered, and they have just directly airstriked their houses. So in an overall bombing campaign, they have input the location of known journalists in the Gaza Strip and fired at their house and killed them and their families dozens of times. They've been systemically wiping out anyone who they think would be able to like report on their war crimes. From the Committee for the Protection of Journalists. As of November 17th, 42 journalists and media workers were confirmed dead, 37 Palestinian, 4 Israeli, and 1 Lebanese, 9 journalists injured, 3 missing, 13 arrested, multiple assaults, threats, cyber attacks, censorships, and killing of family members. And they have a list of all of the killed, missing, or injured. Ahmed Fatima, photographer for Al Qaeda News TV, media worker, killed in a strike in Gaza, killed after sustaining injuries on November 12th from an Israeli airstrike on his home in northern Gaza, killed in a strike at the entrance of Qusas town, east of the southern city of Khan Yunis, killed in a strike in the Gaza Strip, killed in a strike on his home in Gaza, along with 42 family members, according to the Palestinian Authority's official news agency, Wafa. Killed in a strike on his home along with his wife and 2 daughters in the Al-Nasser neighborhood in northern Gaza. Killed along with 11 members of his family in an Israeli airstrike on their home in Khan Yunis, southern Gaza Strip. Killed in an Israeli airstrike in the Nusayrat refugee camp in the Gaza Strip. Killed along with his mother in an Israeli airstrike in the Gaza Strip. Killed with his family members in an Israeli airstrike in the Gaza Strip. Killed with his family members in an Israeli airstrike in the Gaza Strip. Killed with members of his family in a strike on his home in the Zaytun area, eastern Gaza. Killed in a strike on his family home in Khan Yunis, Gaza. Killed with her child in a strike on her home in the Yarmouk neighborhood in Gaza. Killed in an Israeli airstrike in the Jabalia refugee camp in the northern Gaza Strip. Killed in an Israeli airstrike in the Gaza Strip. Killed alongside her child in an Israeli airstrike in Rafah City. Killed in an Israeli airstrike in the Sheikh Radwan neighborhood in Gaza City. Killed in an Israeli airstrike in the Gaza Strip. Initially reported missing when his wife and daughter were killed in a Hamas attack on October 7th. Declared dead after his body was recovered. Oh, this is an Israeli journalist. This guy's called Muhammad Ali, so that's something. He was also killed, would you guess it, in an Israeli airstrike in the northern Gaza Strip. Yeah. Keep in mind that a lot of these strikes are taking place in South Gaza, aka the place that people have been told to evacuate to. Like, they're not in the area that is supposed to be getting indiscriminately shelled. They're in the area people have told to go in the safe zone. And the reason they're getting killed there is because Israel wants every journalist dead so nobody can report on what they're doing except for them. Again, just unimaginable evil, you know? And it's bad for everyone, okay? Like, hey, not to redirect concerns or whatever, but holy shit, if I was like an Israeli civilian, I would be really worried. And not just because Netanyahu is imposing a police state and they have like made criminal and terroristic the consumption of contrary information, but also because they've basically guaranteed like another century of anti-Semitic jihadism. Like, evil this open and unambiguous is an unimaginably powerful radicalizing tool for everyone with an axe to grind. Like, this is one of the reasons why people have said, like, Israel's existence is bad for the safety of Jews as well. And I've said that, and now this goes, like, now 10 times more so. It's what Netanyahu wants. Yeah, it is. Like a lot of, like, religious, well, he's not really that religious. Like, a lot of, like, hardline, nominally religious extremists, you know, like Osama bin Laden. Osama bin Laden wanted to galvanize America against Muslims in order to get Muslims to join in with, like, the caliphate so that they felt it was their only place for safety. And likewise, Netanyahu wants, you know, benefits from the perception of a world united against Jews, because that fear, the fear that the world hates you, is what has given him his career. His entire political career has been him posing himself as the one strong man capable of defending Jews in their homeland against enemies. So he needs enemies, a lot of enemies. It's like Fascist 101, you know? Let's finish this video.
When we have been able to enter, it's with
Some
the
rando
Israel
stop
Defense
spamming.
Forces, and of course, they control what we are able to see. We cannot speak to Gazans in that situation, no matter how close we are to them. We can only see what we're able to see with the army. And of course, our colleagues who are covering Gaza are Palestinian journalists themselves. 37 have died already in 6 weeks, the most deadly period for journalists since the Committee to Protect Journalists began. They're giving their lives to show us what's happening.
You've heard now, after more than 5.5 weeks of this war, President Biden is now saying the only way out of this will be a two-state solution. What do you see? Do you see any room for that happening?
This has been the idea now for years, but there's been no movement on the peace process at all since the end of the Second Intifada, you know, around 2005.
Well, there has been movement, just in the wrong direction.
2007, that was the last time we were really seeing conversations. The first question is, where would it be? The landmass that's available to Palestinians now is the West Bank, and that we have this huge issue with settlers who are...
Do you think there's any risk of the popular support pendulum swinging too far and actually supporting the terrorism of Hamas? In the Arab world, yes. And, like, from their perspective, why wouldn't they? Hamas has objectively done far like less bad shit than Israel. Like objectively, there's not even an argument to be had in the other direction. Obviously, this is going to lead to like a ton of jihadist sentiment, a ton of people in the Arab world going, damn, you know, I thought that Hamas did cringe shit, but actually, now that I know what they were up against and what they were facing down, now that I know that they were resisting like the eradication of their people, damn, it's pretty hard to criticize them now, and it's just going to lead to things getting worse and worse. And again, Netanyahu wants this. He literally referred to Hamas as an asset to his administration. Like this is all directly going according to Bibi's plan, with the exception of the fact that he doesn't seem to be very popular in Israel at the moment, largely because the scale of the October 7th attack was perceived as a massive security failure, and he has literally built his career on being the security guy. So for that reason, it's kind of undercut his narrative that he's the only person that can protect Jewish people from like Arab violence. I just think it's because they don't have the resources. If they could, they would. If Hamas had resources, Hamas wouldn't exist. Hamas is born entirely from the deliberate machinations of the Israeli government and their complete unwillingness to give even an inch to the Palestinian people. If the Palestinian people had resources, their best chance forward for peace and for hope and for life would not be like ragtag jihadist organization that only came about because every peaceful opportunity to like negotiate their existence had been shut down by Israel. So when people say like, well, sure, but Hamas would be just as bad if they had the power, I don't think Hamas could exist if they had power. I think that power would have led the Palestinian people to better outcomes. Now, if there were some separate set of circumstances, some contrived, like, something happens, whatever, where Hamas had a bunch of military power and also were still in power, like, there wasn't any, like, other hope for peace, yes, I think that Hamas would be monstrous, for sure, for sure. They might even get as bad as Israel if they tried very hard. Yeah,
increasingly becoming violent against Palestinian villagers there. I was there seeing hundreds of people being forcibly displaced from their land by violence, sometimes by actually being killed. 700,000 settlers there who are building on land where they're not supposed to build, supported increasingly by the government and the Israeli army, which many international NGOs say is a war crime if the government's actually sponsoring it. Then, of course, you've got Gaza, which would theoretically be at least the economic capital of a state because everyone there is the most highly educated. It is the wealthiest part in terms of its access to a port if it wasn't under siege. Gaza's gone. Half of the housing units there are gone. It's been completely leveled. So where actually would this even take place?
From the beginning of this war, there has been this concern it could broaden, it could spread in the region. You've reported from across the region.
We can't pretend this wouldn't happen in reverse if an Islamic State was in control of the Levant instead of a Jewish one. Yeah, okay, and that would be bad too. You've made the mistake of assuming this is some kind of existential battle between, like, Islam and Judaism, when in reality, the religion is almost immaterial. What matters is the power and the politics behind it. A bad thing would have happened if the situation was reversed. Well, sure. But, yeah. Also worth noting that if a colonizer Islamic State had taken over an area that was controlled largely by Western or Western-aligned Jews and forced them into an open-air concentration camp, pretty sure we would have invaded rather than giving them nukes. Just saying. Rather than giving them decades of military and political support, shielding them from UN resolutions, letting them commit decades and decades of international human rights violations, and giving them nuclear weapons, I think we probably would have done something else. But, Yeah, true, Alec Hunter, for sure. Even in a piece like this, where the narrative is overall incredibly sympathetic to the Palestinian people, they still have to say shit like journalists have died, as opposed to journalists have been directly targeted and killed in airstrikes aimed at their family homes,
Years. Is that concern still there?
That concern is still there, but much less than it was at the beginning. It's become clear that, firstly, Iran has stepped forward and said, listen, to Hamas officials, we did not know this attack was going to happen. You didn't let us know. We didn't do it in coordination. So while they have been sponsoring Hamas, it's not the same as a fully staged attack. The same with Hezbollah in Lebanon. It's become clear that while they are launching strikes, they are not escalating that to a full state.
I mean, what's wrong with all those Jewish towns in New York? It's not historical, but it's Jewish-owned. Yeah, the narrative that Jews are only safe in Israel is such bullshit. Primarily, you can just point at what's happening now and go, no, it's not. How can you simultaneously argue that that Jews are only safe in Israel, but then say that Israel has to continue to fight for its existence day after day, or it'll be eradicated by the Arab coalition or whatever? How can you balance they're only safe here, but also this area is so dangerous that they have to constantly fight for it? It's total bullshit. Jews face a lot of persecution, and man, Israel is not helping. It's really not helping. Jews have historically been the most safe in Muslim nations. That was the case up until about 150 years ago, I think. Yeah, I think up until around the new age of colonization, I think for the most part, I'm being very general here because I'm sure there's a lot of nuance that I don't know. But my impression is that generally speaking, for centuries and centuries, to live as a Jew in Europe is to every 5 years an incest baby king with water in his brain would declare that you're the reason the crops wouldn't grow, and you would be forced over to the next European country or something. Whereas there was a relatively greater amount of stability in the Muslim world, but even then that's generalizing, right? The Muslim world, it's a big place. So yeah, I don't really know, but that's obviously not the case right now. Probably a lot of that is because I don't know what would have really led to is it a pan-Arabist thing, or pan-Arabic thing? There's some kind of regional shift in anti-Semitism that accompanied sort of the new era of colonization, Or was it? It couldn't have been directly because of Israel. I don't know. It's probably the British's fault for carving up borders. I don't know.
Full-scale war, and they have their own interests to defend, which is they are in a powerful political position in Lebanon, and they don't want to be seen as complicit in getting a lot of Lebanese people killed. So at the moment,
it's because of pan-Arabism. Well, the only example that I know of for sure is that after the revolution in Iran, a bunch of Jews fled Iran because there were a lot of Jews in Iran, and they went over to Hollywood and Beverly Hills because, like, before, under the Shah, there was space for Jewish Iranians, but after the Islamic Revolution, there definitely wasn't, or at least there was less so.
moment, those parties don't seem to be getting involved. What's more of a question here is what happens to Palestinians? We are seeing scenes that remind everybody of the Nakba, the catastrophe, what Palestinians in the Arab world call 1948, when Palestinians were forcibly moved from their land and never allowed to come back. These queues of people we're seeing moving into South Gaza. The IDF is saying they are going to...
Looks like it was mostly Israel coming to be. Yeah, I don't think that that's entirely responsible for it, but my understanding is that a pretty significant part of the history of anti-Semitism in the Middle East was shaped and exacerbated by the Nakba, the forcible, ethnic cleansing of Palestinians by the British to clear out space for Jewish occupation, and the idea of the safe place for Jewish people being like basically the fundamental origin point of the entire, like, Muslim world's anti-Semitism is really fun. Dude, it's like, literally, like, because that's on us too, that's on the British. So it's like the two greatest crimes against Jews in all of human history happened one right after another. The Holocaust, and then we made half the planet hate Jewish people by doing an ethnic cleansing on their behalf. What the I'm being reductive. There was more to it than that with the Muslim world. You know, I'll do a research stream at some point. The British didn't do the Nakba. Didn't the British like own the territory previously and give the Jewish settlers like permission with like the weapons and space to go like, hey, here you go? Sorry, I'm sorry. It'd be more direct to say the British enabled it and let it happen, not like British soldiers directly. The British mandate in Palestine expired in 1947. Yeah, but they enabled it. Like, they cleared the... Overlooked, not enabled it? What? I'm pretty sure they... Hold on. This is kind of like an edge case point here, I feel, because we're arguing semantics. It's not relevant to the specific point. Hold on. Violent displacement and dispossession of Palestinians... Term is used to describe both the events of 1948 and the ongoing occupation, Palestinian territories, and persecution by Zionist militias and later the Israeli army and subsequent... Yeah, but like, okay, but like the British set the stage for this, right? Because they had the mandate over the area, and as a consequence of that, like, they were the ones who basically handed the torch over to the Zionists to set this all up, right? Yes, they gave the settlers their blessing. No? Why are people disagreeing on this? They armed the settlers. I can't believe right now I'm fighting to justify my hatred of the British people. There were Jewish militia groups that attacked British soldiers. Yeah, like Der Stern. Yeah. They wanted to ally with the Nazis. A lot of the weapons used to commit the Nakba were bought from the Brits. My understanding of the issue is that while the Nakba was committed by the Zionist militias and the army, the whole situation was basically the British going like, yep, it's yours now. Good luck. And we all know the British are responsible for basically everything even approximating regional in the area anyway, so whatever. Point made. I apologize for my reductive summary of a historical event.
Spread that invasion into South Gaza. So then where do people go? Either they're trapped in a kill box, or there is a humanitarian corridor into Egypt. Will they ever be allowed to come back? 1.5 million Palestinian refugees already living across the region. How many more will this be?
Isn't it crazy that the Queen was present during the Nakba? Like the one who just died, you know? Isn't that wild? She lived so goddamn long.
Another case of them losing their land for good.
We know you're going to be back out there reporting for us very soon, but in the meantime, Layla Molana Allen, it is great to have you here in studio with us. Thank you.
Thank you, Amna.
No, she became queen 4 years after the Nakba. Wait, wasn't she queen like in 46? Not until 52? Oh, never mind. Sorry. For some reason I had 46 in my head. Elizabeth II. Yeah, 52. Okay, yeah, never mind. Can't blame that one on her. Vosh said she was alive, you morons. Well, yes, but I thought she was the queen at that point. I thought she was queen right after World War II, which I guess she was, just not at the time that I thought.
Amount of rubble, personal items, and destroyed furniture used to be the home of 2 Palestinian families in the herding community of El Mafagara until 2 weeks ago. One day, Jewish settlers who lived nearby arrived with guns, trucks, and a bulldozer, according to those who live here. In minutes, they say, everything was gone.
The first attack was against these houses. The settlers came dressed in soldiers' clothing and started attacking and destroying everything. We never saw something like that from the soldiers. Before, we received a warning letter, but this time, the settlers just came in soldiers' clothing.
That's not how it works. They have to show an overwhelming evidence for it not to be a war crime. Yeah, I know that like terms, I know stuff like this gets like ignored all the time anyway, but my impression was that it can't literally just be like, wow, we found a gun in here, because if that was the case, all anyone would ever have to do is be like sprinkling cocaine on someone that you just shot, you know what I mean? Like as a cop, just be like, oh, gun. Like the IDF was the first group in there. They could easily drop guns in there. Even if they didn't, I don't give a fuck that there are guns in that hospital. Why wouldn't there be, you know? They're getting genocided. But additionally, even then, like, that doesn't mean that you can indiscriminately kill civilians. Like, there's always a responsibility to not indiscriminately kill civilians. The requirement to minimize the loss of civilian life is always present. It's never gone.
And destroyed everything.
Hamanda says his family has lived on this land in the Hebron Hills for centuries, herding sheep and cows and cultivating olives. The settlements, he says, are getting closer and closer. And with the war between
if you ever want to feel even more seething hatred for Israeli settlers, one of the best ways to do that is learn about the history of them destroying olive trees in the West Bank. You know, it's the Mediterranean. Olives are a big deal, and there's a very strong like cultural and historical tie to olive trees, like in terms of how long they take to grow and like the quality of the product. It's like a whole thing. Okay, it's a whole thing. And there have been a bunch of examples of Israeli settlers basically just like going up and destroying the trees for no reason other than to fuck over the Palestinian occupants. Like, I think that's a very good indication. It's not the only indication. There's a million indications, but it's a very good indication of how so much of the like fuel for the West Bank settlers is just hatred and like genocidal rage. It's not like purely expansionism. It's also that they're evil. Olives are a symbol of peace in Judaism, so like it's fucked for everyone. Yeah. They often replace the olive trees with pine trees to westernize the region. It's fucked up because like olive trees aren't like anti-Jewish or whatever. Like it's spite for spite's sake. If anything, it's eradication of Jewish culture because olive trees are indigenous to this area, and this area is like historically Israel, right? Like, how can you simultaneously say that your birthright to this area is justified by thousands of years of ancestry and precedent, and then when you come in here, you're like, oh, olive trees? What do those have to do with the Holy Land? Yoink! Put some pine trees in. They created mass tree charity drives and propagandized all Jews in the world to donate and plant trees. I think I remember hearing about that shit. It's so sad. Since 1967, settlers have uprooted more than 800,000 Palestinian-owned olive trees. The burning of olive trees in mass swaths of agricultural land in the village of Berin in Nablus in July stands out as a tragic reminder of the ongoing theft. Yeah, it's shit like this. Like, they just go through and destroy the trees. Olive trees can take up to 20 years to grow back and become productive again after an attack, yeah. The really fucked up shit is that the Palestinians are the descendants of the original Jews and the Israeli immigrants the descendants of Westerners who converted to Judaism largely. I don't know. I don't want to do any like ethnography stuff because I know it's very complicated, but there's no denying that Palestinians have an incredibly strong historical tie to the land, and there absolutely would be like a link between modern day Palestinians and, you know, the people who have lived in the area for thousands of years, Palestinians. You know, if for no reason other than because there tends to be cultural osmosis for groups that live in the same area due to like culture and climate and stuff. It is true, by the way, that a lot of Israeli settlers are Americans. Like a significant portion of them are Westerners who came over because they're fascists and they want to be part of their like reclamation return with a V project, you know? So you'll have people who grew up in Brooklyn coming over and burning olive trees to people whose great, 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 and so on, like grandparents tended to those trees, while screaming that it's their birthright.
Israel and Hamas, Hamandeh says things now seem to be out of control, with threats and violence.
I feel humiliated. I feel insulted. To be choked out, to be so badly treated. Not by Jews, because Jews, we have been living with them. They are good people. But by these Zionists who come from everywhere in the world, who know no religion or ethics.
According to the UN humanitarian agency...
Yeah, he's even saying it right here, yeah. Like, Israel isn't even really like a Jewish state, in the same way that, like, the Vatican is a Catholic state, mini-state, whatever. You know, it's basically just a secular fascist state that uses Judaism as the cultural and ethnic through line for its fascism. Much in the same way that a Christian nationalist America would not really be a Christian state. Does that make sense? Like, Republican politicians go on and on and on about God and the Bible and Christianity. Not one of those fucks goes to church. None of them give a shit. None of them care. None of them care whether there's a God or not. You know, they have power on earth and they want to use it while they can. You know, much in the same way, like Netanyahu's governance is not like is not like it's not governed by like an authentic appreciation for Jewish history and culture. You know, I don't know how you could be a fascist while also having a genuine appreciation for Jewish history and culture. You know, I don't even know. That's a tough sell.
See, OCHA, at least 15 villages have been destroyed since the October 7 Hamas attack on Israel, and more than 1,000 people have been displaced. The Israeli government press office and the Israeli Defense Forces declined to comment about the increasing number of Jewish settlers' attacks against Palestinian farmers. In the last weeks, the Israeli government began the distribution of thousands of rifles and...
Is authentic Jewish culture incompatible with fascism? I don't really know what authentic culture is. I just don't think... I think you'd have a very tough time being appreciative of the history of Jewish people and their struggle and also being a fascist. I just think that's a very... I think those are two very difficult positions to reconcile simultaneously. I think you can be insincere in your appreciation for Jewish culture, or you can not be a fascist. If it's possible to be both at once, I think you have to really be selective about what it is you're paying attention to. Again, it's not impossible. Like, again, I don't really think there is such a thing as like an authentic culture or even an authentic appreciation of religion. It's always culturally filtered, but you know.
Handguns for civilians who live in border areas and in settlements in the West Bank.
We are going from place to...
like same as it's basically this fucking guy. Like it's basically impossible to like authentically believe in the teachings of Jesus Christ while being a fascist. So most people who are both Christians and fascists just don't actually care about Christianity. They just use it as like an aesthetic racialized signifier to discriminate against other groups, you know? They're giving the settlers guns. Oh yeah, the Israeli military and this guy, the national security minister, who's a terrorist, by the way, just a terrorist who was appointed, you know? They frequently, I don't know how frequently, but fuck, this dude's face is scary. Hand guns out to settlers so that they can menace and extrajudicially murder Palestinians in the West Bank.
Place, giving out these firearms. This saves lives. Every rifle, every pistol that we are freeing up with the issuing of licenses can save a family. Every firearm, every assault rifle can save a residential building. I tell the citizens of Israel, go arm yourselves.
At this Bedouin village that shares a fence with a Jewish settlement, things are getting worse by the day, the residents say. They say they have been threatened to leave the area by the settlers and are living under a kind of siege.
It's 2 weeks. They came, settlers militia entered, actually invaded the community in a very horrific way, and they detained all of the youth in one tent in the community, and they were interrogating us very violently. It was like something that we...
Can the Arabs in Israel legally obtain a gun? I don't know the answer to that for sure, but I would be absolutely fucking astonished if Palestinians in the West Bank had the ability to purchase firearms. Like, I don't know, but I would be astonished.
We just see terrorist people do.
People here say that before the war, they would call the Israeli police to solve any problems they had with the neighbor settlers. But now, they say, nobody comes to help them anymore.
Cool.
Yamwesha, VOA News, Hebron.
Yeah, who said it in chat a second ago? This is unironically some, like, Rwanda shit or whatever. Like, you have two ethnic groups, one, like despising the other in a shared area. One of the ethnic groups is being given a fuck ton of weapons, and the police stop answering calls from the other group. Like, the impression that I get right now, basically, is that if everything went dark in the West Bank for, like, 1 week, there would be, like, the purge would happen, and then there would just be no Palestinians in the West Bank. How likely do you think Arab intervention is? I don't think it's very likely. What did the Palestinian guy mean when he said the police had helped them before? What he means is that it used to be the case that the police would pretend to uphold, like, an egalitarian state and would arrive to help settle disputes. But now, like, the police aren't even bothering to show up, basically giving implicit permission to the settlers to do whatever they want, which they are. They're killing Palestinians in the West Bank and taking their territory. Right now, as we speak, there are settlers that are arming themselves to go take over another village. There's no ambiguity to this. This is literally, you live ostensibly in, like, a free and equal state, and a bunch of quote-unquote civilians who are armed by the military and given permission by the military are approaching you. The police won't answer your call, and they are going to kill you or force you out, then take your land and build settlements there. Like, it's that simple, you know? I just checked. It's legal for an Arab to buy a gun in Israel, but since it's not a guaranteed right, there is an arbitrary list of requirements which makes it very unlikely or flat out impossible for Arabs to get them. Okay, gotcha. The poll tax of gun rights, gotcha. Yeah, Palestinians aren't even allowed to use all the roads in the West Bank. West Bank roads that forbid Palestinian vehicles. There are maps of it online, you know? People will unironically argue this isn't an apartheid state, by the way. They'll be like, no, actually, this is a free and equal state. And you can see, like, different roads have different permissions for what you're allowed to, whether Palestinian vehicles, which have different license plates, are allowed to travel on them. Settlers are not inherently military targets. However, the groups of settlers who are armed by the military and move as, like, the vanguard of settlement are effectively operating as a militia and probably could be treated as such ethically. My only argument is that settlers aren't inherently military targets, because people were calling, like, the Israelis who live down here next to the Gaza Strip settlers. And these guys aren't going village to village with guns. Like, they're part of a settler colonial project, sure, but I wanted to be clear about the distinction between, like, somebody who participates in a settler colonial project, i.e. lives in Israel as like an Israeli. B, someone who is a settler in the West Bank, but is passive in doing so. And C, somebody who is a settler in the West Bank and is actively operating as a militia, in which case, like, that last group probably fairly could be considered. If there's a group of settlers marching towards your village with firearms to oust you from your territory, any sane person with any understanding of the right to self-defense would say, like, okay, yeah, you could defend yourself there. Except, of course, the Palestinians in the West Bank don't have guns. They don't have the ability to organize, and if they did defend themselves, the police would come and kill them anyway, or the IDF, so, yeah, whatever. Vosh, is this going to get worse? Yes. Is this a good time to visit Israel for vacation? Yeah, if you want to be like the most depraved of war tourists, I suppose. Get some good footage for your vlog. Close this, close that. Okay.